Thanks for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Listing. I'm your host, Jeremy Medor.
And I'm Danielle Downs.
And with Beyond the Listing, we are discussing the business of real estate beyond the listing, if you could imagine that. So we are going to be discussing the business of real estate with a realtor today who is heavily invested in the local community. He grew up in the area and firmly believes in the value of what he and his team bring to not just sellers, but buyers as well as just simply, as he says, how can I help you? And, you know, kind of looking at things holistically. So I'm really excited to have, to show that conversation. It was a really inspiring one.
Awesome.
But as far as kind of like, you know, where we are as a company right now, I wanted to kind of go over some things with you and talk a little bit about how this spring market has kind of...
Busy.
Yeah.
busy.
So at the time of recording here, we're at the end of March, but we have a lot of data, obviously, from January, February, and up until today, obviously.
Yeah.
And it can only be described as just different than previous years.
Yep. I would say even the last 2 weeks, just my incoming like phone calls and emails, like I'm going cross-eyed by the end of the week. For sure. In a good way. It's all good.
Yeah. Don't stop them coming.
Don't stop. I'll get glasses.
Yeah, right. I'll get Danielle help of whatever sort. I don't know yet. But generally, a lot of that can be related back to our weather patterns that we experienced this winter. Yeah. Lack of snow, and early spring market as a result of it.
Yep.
But you know, on the whole, I think it's been a wonderful experience so far.
Absolutely.
And we're training a couple of new employees.
Yes.
Dom and Richie.
Yep. Everybody seems to be loving them, and they're fitting right in, and look forward to that. Yep.
I'm hoping that next week, the first week of April, is their last training week.
Yes.
They've been with us since February. And so it's exciting to see, you know, new talent grow, and they both have backgrounds that are very supportive of what they're going to be doing now. So they bring with them years of experience in different fields that actually pan over pretty well. Yeah. So really excited with that.
Yep. I think it's gonna be great.
Yep. So that's about it for now. Wonderful. Without further ado, let's get over. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Listing. I'm your host, Jeremy Medor, and today I'm sitting with
Nick Pelletier, president of Pelletier Properties.
I know that you're involved in some organizations that you're really a champion of, and I admire that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about those organizations so that maybe we can, you know, kind of unpack that a little bit.
Absolutely. I think I realized early on in my career that I wanted to be a community real estate agent. If I was going to be working in the community, I wanted to be a part of the community. And so for me, community is all about giving back. And that's been the case since I started my career. So the first organization that I got really involved in early on was Rise Above Foundation, which helps kids in foster care develop a sense of normalcy in their lives. We all know, and it's amazing, anytime I ask someone for money, it's the easiest ask, because we all know kids in foster care have been given a bad shake, you know, no fault of their own. They have fallen into
strictly innocent in the entire thing.
100%. And so this organization provides them with normalcy. What does that mean? It means that a lot of times these individuals don't have access to the funding to play sports. Most of the time to play a sport now, you have to pay. You know, it's not just kind of all included anymore. Gymnastics, ice hockey, go on vacations.
Those
a
are
lot of times,
things.
you know, a lot of times individuals, families really may not have enough money to also bring one or two of their foster children along on a vacation with the rest of the family.
Ooh.
So they can go into what's called respite, which is meaning that they kind of stay behind with a temporary family while their foster family goes on vacation. And so we've been able to kind of enter into these problems that existed across the spectrum.
Sure.
And provide solutions. Okay. So buy those plane tickets so that the kid can go and join. Because most of the time the families want them to come. It's just a matter of money.
Right. So logistically, it's the logistics challenge, whether it be financial or physical logistics, and it's not necessarily a desire-based thing.
Very, very rarely, you know, and I haven't even heard of a desire-based. It's always the money, because you know we all know that these people who are offering to be foster parents, in many cases, they're not getting loads of money to do that.
No, it's barely meeting the need of the actual costs.
Right? And we're talking clothes and food.
Mm-hmm.
So we give them those opportunities that are outside of that to let them be a kid. Sure. And those experiences, we all know they change our lives. Like we all remember, our first coach who taught us hard work and dedication. We all remember that vacation that taught us about how big the world was.
Yep.
So it's an amazing organization. It's been so easy to fundraise for. And we pivoted a couple of years ago and decided to start what is Pelletier Properties' niche going to be?
Yep.
And we decided, let's help kids aging out of foster care furnish their first apartment, because that's another gap.
That's not hyper specific, but it's specific enough where it is covering it's covering the gap that you're addressing here, and it's out of the ordinary thought process.
100%, because a lot of people think, when we all got our first apartment or our first house, grandma gave us plates.
Yeah.
Aunt Susie gave us her couch.
Yeah.
We had stuff in our parents' basement. Rarely do these individuals have all those resources. They might have a couple.
They've collected some personal belongings along the way, but by and large, they haven't been items that you can furnish an apartment with.
And I got to be honest, a lot of times they show up to the table with a trash bag full of stuff.
Yep.
And that's their stuff.
Yep.
I remember very vividly the first apartment we did. Her response when she came in, we do it while you were out style. So we actually kick them out for the day, furnish the apartment, and then have them come back. It's really cool. And when she came back, she said, "This is the first time I've ever owned stuff.
Yep.
That's mine."
Yep.
She had a dog. We got a dog bed, dog toys. It's very simple stuff. And so we've done about 8 now.
Yep.
Each one, we're so lucky to partner with Joshua Allen Design. So they kind of come in, they actually do like a design consult.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it actually feels like you're really designing a home.
Sure.
And I think what's really important and clear is we do not pay for first and last. We do not find them the apartment. We do not fund any part of their ability to get the apartment.
Got it.
These are people who have succeeded on their own,
Okay.
which I think is key, right? I want to make sure that we're investing in the right people,
Right.
The right individuals who got on their feet
Yep.
and help them start above.
Okay. So they've made the initial efforts, and you're just giving them a little bit extra support just to get them over that hump.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because I can tell you the amount of times we've walked into the apartment pre us doing the furnishing, and it's a mattress on the floor.
Yeah.
It's maybe a chair in the kitchen. And again, this is no fault of their own. It's just they don't have that baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of them, it's just a house. They walk into this apartment because they have to live somewhere. And I truly feel like when we're done, it feels like a home. Like some of those before and afters are truly amazing.
Yeah. So I think that from a psychological standpoint, what you're observing at that point is they may have had a lot of displacement in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Where they haven't really had their space.
Correct.
And so they're so used to having kind of a transitional lifestyle, where a transient lifestyle, where they're never really in one place for very long.
Correct.
And so that mobility that not a lot of stuff offers is probably a little bit more of a comfort to them due to the fact that they're so used to it.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a good comfort. It's just one of those kind of like, this is, trauma from my childhood kind of thing, just following me around. And what you guys are doing is you're making it official. Like, this is you now.
Yeah.
This is your life. Yeah. And they probably at that point feel a sense of pride and fulfillment, and kind of like a notch on the ladder where they're just really gripping on tight now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think you bring up a really good point that in some ways, before we started this, their existence in that house, that apartment, was what they were used to, right? They were used to the fact that it was kind of pulling things together to work.
Yep.
I remember one time one of the youth was like, I really just want a new bed because this one's been broken. And, every time I have to kind of put it back together, and that's kind of the norm that they're used to. And so it's been a lot of fun, and we are so blessed that we used to kind of fund it internally in Pelletier Properties, and we're so blessed that now we have donors from the outside. We've partnered with some different companies who have actually started to send us stuff. One key thing of this whole thing is a lot of people reach out to me, and I sometimes I feel bad, and they reach out saying, I have a bunch of stuff I want to donate, from my house. And I typically respectfully have to say, we actually made a decision to mostly get new stuff.
Sure.
With some rare exceptions, because again, I want to move away from that secondhand mentality.
Yeah.
Right. I want to create it in a way that you're actually getting your own stuff that hasn't been pre-used by someone else.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things we've done really well. Rise Above has kind of always had that mentality, even when it comes to like bikes and iPads. We've always bought things new for youth. There's some great organizations out there that take used stuff, and I actually typically direct people to Household Goods in Acton, which is an amazing organization. Yep. And for this program, we've really wanted to focus on new items.
That's noble.
Thank you.
I think that's a really clear vision as to what it is that you're trying to provide these individuals. And that's it's really important, especially for young adults starting off on their own. That first few years of young adulthood will really set the trajectory for what their lives will form out to be.
I look at it a lot, and I say this a lot when I'm talking to people. For me, it's a lot like, what is it, the Robert Frost poem? That's the fork in the road with the road less traveled. Yep. And I truly feel that when you look at foster care and you look at this situation, our goal is to get a youth on the road less traveled, which is the better road, right?
Sure.
It's the road of success. It's the road of personal success, external success. Unfortunately, there's a reality where many fall back because of the situation that they grew up in.
They don't know anything else.
No.
And that's a reality that not just foster kids, but people in general live with, and the home environments that you grow up in will largely determine how your adult life looks, as long as you don't question it and find a reason to get off that path.
Yeah.
And so that intentional fork in the road that you're placing in front of them, right? It gives them all the pointers to what home life could be versus what it has been.
Yeah.
And so that sets them on a trajectory that they probably don't really anticipate. And that's kind of a unraveling of the sweater, so to speak, where that being called into consideration or being challenged, like, this is how I live. Oh, wow, you can actually live like this kind of thing. Yeah. That might actually start a domino effect of questioning in their life that actually betters their life overall in other departments that aren't even tied to that.
It's a level of pride, right? So I remember very vividly one of the youth after we finished going, I can't wait to have my friends come over. Mm-hmm. And we were like, oh yeah, do you do that a lot? She goes, no. Never.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed about my place.
And so that level of pride, like when you, and I mean pride in a positive way, right? Proud has some negative connotations. Sure. But when you're proud of who you are, you're much more likely to continue to be successful.
Right. And then you also start expressing a bit of self-love as well.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you loathe your space that you're in and you're embarrassed by it, or it's a humiliation, or it's just one of those like, marks against it kind of thing. Yeah. You're less apt to engage socially in your own space.
That's true.
In addition to that, because of that discomfort, you might actually start engaging less socially in other people's spaces, or have this idea of home is not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And that's really detrimental.
That's really detrimental. Yeah.
Yep. So, wow. Well, it's deep. It's deep. And it's a really good, it's a really good cause.
I think what's important about it is you mentioned it earlier, right? It's a very tight purpose, right? Mm-hmm. We are filling a void that no one else was really touching. I think a lot of people, luckily Rise Above has filled this void about children in foster care during their experience. There's this whole other gap that we all know is a problem, which is when they age out. That whether it's 21, 26, they can choose to age out, different factors, but that's a tough age.
It is.
So now you're entering into what
really
is
in a gap,
a tough age. And now, they're usually getting their first job. Mm-hmm. And we are so blessed that a lot of the youth we're working with have graduated college. And
what's the age range generally? Is it 18 or is it something like 16, 17?
It's usually, so they're usually aging out somewhere between 18 and 26.
Okay.
The reality is, and if I got that wrong, Sarah Baldiga, director of Rise Above, I apologize, executive director. But my understanding is they can choose to age out earlier. Obviously, at 18, they're an adult.
Okay.
And for many reasons, it's beneficial to still be in foster care or under DCF care. Yep. Even if you're living on your own, sure, to be under the care of DCF for college purposes and different things like that.
Okay.
So there's many individuals, I believe, will stay a little bit later, healthcare, yep, things like that.
Yeah.
But they can still be living independently at that point. They don't necessarily have to be in a foster home, but they're still under the care and custody of DCF.
Got it. All right. So it's kind of a gray area.
It is a gray area.
Transition period. All right. Yep. That's, yeah. And catching them during that during that phase in their life will definitely begin the healing process for them sooner. Yeah. And that's really advantageous too. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So where can people go to learn more a little bit about this?
100%. Yeah. So a couple opportunities. You can go to the Rise Above Foundation website. I believe off the top of my head, reriseabove.org. There's also a Facebook page which you can follow. And we have our annual golf tournament. So our annual golf tournament is coming up July 22nd. I believe. And that's going to be held at Oak Hill Country Club. So we'll be advertising that on our Pelletier Properties personal Facebook page. And that is our main fundraising event. So through that event last year, we raised over $20,000, close to $30,000. Our goal is if we can raise about $30,000, we can do about 4 renos a year.
Okay.
Thanks to other donations we get and other in-kind donations that we get, we're able to do with, like a $6,000 budget, we can do a pretty good project.
Yep.
So,
and primarily, just so that we're clear on this, you're talking about furnishings, decor, things of that nature. You're not talking about any structural modifications.
God, no. Okay. I am not a structural engineer.
No,
I know.
I'm talking about like dividing walls and doors and stuff like that.
So we try really hard. If a landlord gives us permission, or I should say, gives the youth permission to paint, sure, we may provide the paint. Right. But I'm a landlord myself, right? Yep. And in no ways do I want to put a situation where a landlord feels that anything has been done to their property that they didn't want done. Sure. So all of this is stuff that can go with the youth too, which I think is key.
That is key.
Because our lives change.
Yep.
We have different situations. And so I want the stuff to be able to go with them.
It would be super hard for somebody to intentionally leave an environment that is specifically set up for them that is not mobile to another unit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so all of our stuff is mobile. Most of our stuff actually is it's amazing what they make nowadays that is assemblable and deassemblable.
Yes. Our couch right over here.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So the armrests can come off and the whole back comes off. Yeah. And it's fairly modular in that I think it only requires maybe at most one tool. Yeah. And I know the armrest can pop right off without any tools. Yeah. And so it's easily moved to different units or whatever. Yeah. Not that we intend on any of that soon, but you never know 100%. What life throws at you. So modular furniture has really become quite an advanced technology.
Well, we made a couple early mistakes early on where we bought full box springs. Those don't fit up most apartment staircases.
No. So do you do splits now, or do you?
So you can do splits. That definitely works. One time, our first one we ever did. Again, we learned a lot. Yeah. We've gotten much better at this over time.
Good.
The first one we ever did, we bought a full box spring. Thank you. We bought a full box spring in a bed. That thing, it was a couch. That was the couch. We bought a full couch. And that thing was not going up the stairs. No matter what we did, it wasn't going. So this was literally the only couch in the living room, right? So we ran out to a local store. We found it on Google Maps or whatever. It was a furniture store. And we walk in. We're like, we need something we can get up the stairs. And the guy's like, well, I got this futon over here. And we're like, oh, it's great. He goes, do you mind me asking what you're doing? And we explained it to him. And he gave us 20% off or some crazy discount. Nice. And it was like, wow, we're in this random location. This guy doesn't know us at all. Sure. And he's giving us a discount because he saw us frazzled and wanted to support the cause. So
that's awesome.
So our golf tournament's great. Follow us on social media. We're advertising everything there, either at Pelletier Property social media or at the Rise Above social media. And Rise Above's 15-year anniversary is coming up. Sarah, our executive director, calls it the birthday. Okay. So we have our birthday party coming up at Polar Park in May. So some great things coming up to interface more with Rise Above.
All right. Well, I'd like to go on record as donating our services for any media coverage that you guys are looking for.
Thank you so much.
I would be more than happy to help you with that cause of documenting the process as well as leveraging what we can from a social media standpoint
100%.
To get the message out about this important foundation, and allow for you guys to further invest in youth in the area. So
Thank you so
I'd like to go on record as saying that. And if
please,
it isn't,
please send me that clip, please.
yeah, if it isn't on video, it didn't happen. Right? So no, I'd like to help you guys with that, and we are now in a position as a company to further invest in causes like this, and it's important to me.
It is. So. It's a great cause, and I very much appreciate that. You've always been a strong supporter, and I think there's more we can do. And you know, when we look at foster youth in general, there's about 10,000 kids in the system. Rise Above is currently serving about 2,000 of those individuals, which, when you look at it that way, is a small
in Worcester County,
in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Just wasn't sure on that.
So we're really only serving
2,000 out of 10.
Yeah,
I mean that's a pretty good chunk.
It's a good chunk, but we got a long ways to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we did for a little bit look at, should we be expanding to different states, and we said, no, we still haven't met the need in our current. And I think having a really tight purpose in whatever you're doing leads you to much better success.
Yep, that's what we've done at Medore Photography, which is why Next Level has branched off on its own.
Yeah.
So that we can keep Medore Photography to be strictly real estate related work.
100%.
Because if we start deviating or muddying the waters, as it were, we're only going to actually create further problems for growth in the future.
It confuses the outside world.
It does, and it's important that your mission and your message is consistent across your platforms and across your employees. And as soon as you start, getting a little bit too, if you add too many swim lanes, as it were, in one particular cause, you start losing or watering down that message of what you're actually trying to do.
100%.
And there's a huge confusion starts setting in, and then there's too many people applying for limited resources, and those limited resources aren't dedicated to just that one audience that you were looking for anymore. Now it's spread across 2 or 3 or 5, right? And that gets really challenging.
I think what's great is when you're focused. Well, what's great about Rise Above in general is that we've never had to say no to an applicant due to lack of funding. Now, we have declined some applications for different reasons, but never for lack of funding. And so when you're really focused like that, you can make sure that if you get to a point where you're starting to decline applications, then people stop applying. So we've been graced with having some really generous donors, some really generous foundations over the years. And we recently got a government earmark to further fund us into 2024 and 2025.
Fantastic. That's great. Good news. We had, I'm going to pause for a moment. You had touched upon something just now. And it spurred my thought process.
I do have one other thing that I just thought of. We're hoping to build a playground at the Leominster DCF office.
All right. So let me just ask that in a question that way. What other things are you guys up to?
Yeah, so we have this cool new project that we're really excited about. So a couple years ago, we actually had an opportunity as Rise Above to build a playground at the Worcester DCF office. So for those that may not know, many cases, visitation. So when a youth is visiting with either a biological parent, a sibling, whatever it may be, a lot of those supervised visitations historically happen at picnic tables and conference tables, right? And I had the interesting opportunity as being an agent with Keller Williams North Central, which is located right next to Leominster DCF, to actually see it firsthand. I would walk into the office and I would see the visitation happening at the picnic tables out front. And it's a really tough environment to be visiting with family.
It's contrived.
Yeah. And so how can that interaction be anything normal, right? We talked about normalcy.
Yeah.
So when Worcester actually moved their office, we had an opportunity to build a playground there, which we did. As many people may know, Leominster in North Central Mass is moving their office to the old Masons Bowling. And so it's a great new space. It's going to be meet so many different needs. And I sat back and I was like, I can't let this opportunity go. We need to get a playground.
Got it.
So if you can create these interactions in conjunction with play,
absolutely,
you develop a lot more normalcy.
Yep.
There's just reasons to interact, right?
Yep.
It's not sitting there playing with something on a table. It's like, let's go try this. Let's go do this.
It becomes an experience.
It's an experience.
Yep.
So we are currently in the fundraising phase.
What's your goal?
We're seeking to raise between $200,000 and $250,000.
Wow.
the reason why we want to do that is the playground itself is a portion of that, but we also want to make sure that we have funding for the ongoing care of the playground, and also make sure that we can provide adequate training to the staff, and really making it a resource for them.
Sure.
So we are well underway on that. We are in the initial phases. We'll be going public with the fundraising campaign, but I truly believe that that's one of those other things that I'm not going to say a playground will change someone's life, but it can change that relationship so that maybe they look forward to going to visitation.
Yep.
Maybe they see it as their time to, play,
Yep.
And have fun. And so I'm really excited about that project and really energized by DCF as a whole, seeing our Worcester playground and actually
Sure.
looking at this as something they want to do statewide.
That's awesome. That's really reassuring.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And it gives you further confidence in future decision making.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember now what I was trying to think of, one of the things that you touched upon was, doing the, sticking to the core message,
Yeah.
the core goal. And that kind of throws back to a lot of the KW mantra of
Yep.
the one thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, fantastic book
Yeah.
and wonderful messaging there. And when you're talking about these specific avenues that you guys are really concentrating on and you yourself as an individual are concentrating on, you're really putting your all into a single idea.
Yep.
And obviously you have multiple ideas that you're giving, your time to, but you're managing it in such a way where you're really dedicating your resources as much as possible in those avenues versus spreading yourself thin and doing too much.
It's really funny. That's really what I've done on my real estate team too. So, I've built my team around a model where I have buyer's agents who just work with buyers, and I have listing agents who just work with sellers.
Yep.
And a lot of times, I actually had a call with a client last week who was thinking about using our services, and one of his questions was, "Why did you do that?"
Yeah.
Because it's so uncommon.
Yeah. It's like, I do it all.
Yeah. And it was really easy for me to say, I know exactly why I did that. I did that because I want my buyer's agents focused on working the best they can to help buyers find homes and get those homes for the best deals.
Yep.
And I want my listing agents focused on helping sellers sell their homes for the largest profit available. Those are two different types of negotiation.
Specialized approaches, specialized knowledge.
Yep. And so I'm really proud of the system we created, and coming out in the next 6 months, we're gonna really lean into advertising that and hopefully work with you guys on developing some very focused marketing on what those individuals on my team do really well.
That's great. That's great. I think that's crucial, especially with some of the changes that are happening
100%
nationally. And I think that's a good dovetail into that conversation if you're comfortable having
I'm
that.
very comfortable having it.
Okay, yeah. Talk to me a little bit about your impression of the NAR lawsuit, the decisions that have been made, the messaging that's been provided in the past few weeks.
100%.
Just kind of give me a rundown. Assume I know almost nothing.
Okay, but you read the news?
I've read the news, yeah. No,
Okay.
So I'm aware of the existence of it.
Yeah.
More to the challenge is the implications that it has
100%.
on not just you guys, but also us as a result.
100%.
Because there is obviously a trickle down in
100%.
everything that we do.
So I think I want to be very clear on a couple things. One thing I want to be very clear on is right now we have a proposed settlement. Nothing has been approved.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there about this all being final and everything's good to go. We have a proposed settlement, and there's a lot of benefits to the settlement. And I think in general, we're moving down the right path.
Okay.
So nothing's final. We will learn more over the coming months.
Yes, we will.
And I think that the key pieces of the settlement, which are extremely important to me, are the settlement is going to require buyers and buyers agents to enter into contracts. In the state of Massachusetts, that has not been a requirement. It was a requirement in the state of New Hampshire,
Okay.
Which we're also licensed in. But in the state of Massachusetts, it was not a requirement. And, I'm excited about it.
Okay.
I think that it's truly important for buyers to have contractual representation. Someone who wakes up in the morning working for that client and working for their best interest. Without a contract, you're working in a somewhat of a fly-by-night situation where, I'm gonna let them know when I want to put in an offer. And well, don't you want to have someone advocating and looking for opportunities for you?
So the net gain there is that you're going to only encourage cultivated relationships and trust.
which I believe so passionately about. I love working with clients that I've developed a relationship with. I love when I know their dog's name. I love when I know what they're doing for the weekend.
Sure.
Like, it means that I can better represent them.
Because it's not about the transaction.
No, and it means that I'm looking for a house that fits their lifestyle,
Yep.
right? Not just beds, baths, and square footage.
Yep.
So that's one. One thing is we're going to be entering into agreements with buyers and buyers agents. The second piece of the settlement is that going forward, historically, sellers and listing agents would offer up a commission on what we call the MLS multiple listing service, and that commission, buyers agents would see that. Right now, you can actually see it on the public portals, and that would be the compensation for the buyer's agent.
Sure.
Going forward, we're no longer going to be posting that on the MLS. It's no longer going to be allowed.
So it's going to be blind to the buyer's agent?
Not exactly. So the reality is, going forward, my reality is buyers are going to hire buyer's agents to work for them.
Okay.
There will be a commission structure in that offer. Whether or not that is incorporated into future offers, whether or not the buyer's agent asks the seller to pay that commission, that is a conversation between a buyer and a buyer's agent as to how they want to structure the commission. If a buyer is ready, willing, and able to pay personally, that's one option. If a buyer wants to incorporate it into the offer that they make on a seller's property, that's another option.
Okay.
So the reason why I point out that is I think that there's been a lot of misinformation that middle of July, everything's going to dramatically change. There's going to be some key nuances that are going to change, and I actually think they're important nuances. I love the concept of a buyer directly hiring their agent and working with that agent on how that structure of that commission is, or I'm going to use the term professional fee, because I think commission has a negative connotation. It feels like you're taking a piece of something. The reality is, this should be like anything else. This should be like when you hire your accountant to do your taxes, right? For me, for years, it's been extremely important that I have a really good accountant who can work with me on tax solutions that best fit my business.
Right.
You try to use TurboTax. And no offense to TurboTax, I have an extremely complicated tax structure.
Yeah.
And so for me, trying to develop a reality of hiring a professional that best meets your needs and developing an agreement with that individual is in the best interest of the buyer, because they get to determine who they want to hire and what level of service they're looking for, right? On the listing side, we have a menu of services we offer our sellers with different structures of professional fee.
Okay.
I think it should be the same on the buyer side. Okay. Some buyers want more involvement. So I believe that it's going to develop more honest and open conversations between buyers and buyers agents. Yep. I believe that you're going to see a lot of situations where buyers are making decisions about how they're going to include that compensation potentially in their offers. And we'll see, but I don't believe the media coverage has been accurate to the fact that we still believe very passionately that buyers are best suited working with a professional buyer's agent.
Yes,
who knows
instead of dual agency and
the statistics are very clear. 80 plus buyers worked with a buyer's agent. 80 plus buyers who worked with a buyer's agent would work with that agent again. The data is really clear. So I think that we're going to work through this new norm, hopefully with more transparency.
Sure.
Which hopefully puts us in a situation where everyone understands going forward a better process for everyone involved.
The rules of engagement, so to speak. Yeah. No, that's good. So really what it comes down to is that the transparency that will hopefully come out as part of this is ultimately going to be a net gain for everybody involved, even though the transition between here and there might be a little bit muddy for a little bit.
Yeah, we have what is it? 3 months, 3.5 months that we have to work through.
That's a short time window.
It's a short runway, but you know what? Pull the Band-Aid off.
Yep.
Change in all industries is inevitable.
That makes sense.
And I think that avoiding change only causes stress and anxiety.
Yes.
And
it just delays the inevitable.
It just delays the inevitable. Yeah.
And
We're
then,
changing.
And then when inevitable happens, it becomes significantly insurmountable compared to what the change would have been along the way.
Yeah. So I'm ready. I'm working with my team now to set up our systems appropriately for the new norm. Yeah. And I think that everyone should look at this as a way to increase transparency across the board, and put more power in the client's hands in terms of the agents they choose to work with, and how they structure that compensation. And I think that it will never be more important to work with a professional who understands the intricacies of each transaction.
Right.
Because it's so important. And I can tell you from having done this 750 transactions that we've done now, is when you have a good agent on both sides of that transaction, it's seamless. Because you have two advocates working together to find solutions to problems.
Cooperatively.
I can tell you we personally don't do dual agency on my team. I don't believe in it. I think it causes way too much conflict. But when you try to do both sides of a transaction, or try to even work in a situation where maybe I've actually helped try to facilitate some transactions before where people just wanted help. There's always conflict.
Yep.
It always arises in some way, some situation. And I think conflict is typically caused by lack of communication.
For sure.
And when one person is responsible for communicating with everyone, lender, two attorneys, two buyers, two clients, communication will suffer.
Yep. That makes sense. All right. So because of this team play, basically, it's going to also help smooth some of the wrinkles that happen pretty frequently in the real estate realm. And it'll also galvanize the importance of being a professional in the field.
100%.
And also have the additional benefit of seeing a fall off of those who can't do that.
I believe so, right? I think we're making it more into a business.
There's a call to action here for that.
100%. You have to be really smart about understanding what your value is and communicating that value to your clients. I think that we've been in a world for however many years, 10, 20 years, where your value wasn't as critical because of the way that everything was structured. You could walk in, submit an offer, and get compensated. I think now we're gonna have to talk a lot about value. And I love talking about value because if we're not bringing value, then I don't want to do this job. So similar with you guys. If your photography and your services are not bringing value, what's the point?
We're missing the mark. Right. And so and very rarely does it actually come down to a price conversation with people. It's more about what's the equal exchange of goods and why. And that really is kind of being applied here too. And it's not just a taken for granted thing. It's not an assumed thing. Because that commission structure, as you were talking about, first of all, it isn't fully transparent to the buyer. So they're not aware of how all that works. Because I know, even having been in the field myself for as long as we have, even now, when we've made transactions in the past few years, it still had its own speed bumps. And I know a heck of a lot more than the average person, just simply because we are experiencing it and we're living in that realm. And so I can only imagine how little the average buyer or seller would even know about what's going on.
Correct.
And how that could be perceived as deceptive behavior in hindsight.
And I think the important part of this whole thing is, everyone's always been able to list their own home. There has never been any restriction on that. Everyone has always been able to buy their own home and represent themselves if they chose to. Most people did not. Even in this super aggressive market we have, where there are limited inventory and plenty of buyers looking, most sellers still hired a professional to list their house. Why? Because it's complicated.
It is complicated.
It's not easy.
They understand that it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It takes up a significant amount of your time and resources to dedicate your focus to that. And can you live your daily life well while also handling that? And for a lot of people, the answer is categorically no. And that's why.
What's interesting? It's actually something I learned many years ago. I hire an agent on my team to list my personal properties. I learned that that buffer was important. It actually gave me more clarity. When I was on the front lines trying to sell my own investment properties or my own flips, I was too emotional.
Right.
I was too invested in.
It's a human condition.
I was too invested in the way they said something
Sure.
or the approach they had.
Yep.
The minute I differentiated myself to just being a client and one of my agents representing me,
It became black and white.
it became black and white. And of course, yeah, it cost me a little money, but it was valuable.
Think of the peace of mind.
Oh my God.
And the lower stress.
Oh.
And, no rumination going on.
100%.
All those what ifs and the anxiety attached to it, it's just not worth
And
it.
I also could talk to my agent and I could say, what do you think? Yes, I've done 700 plus transactions, but each one's different.
Yep.
And so I could say to my agent, hey, what do you think I should do?
Sure.
And that's a really valuable conversation. And I think that goes to show the fact that, yes, I could have saved a little money here and there. But to your point, overall, hiring a professional, even though I am a professional, was extremely important to me.
Yep.
It's like a doctor doing their own evaluations.
Yeah. It's probably not generally a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Because you're going to miss something.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
Or you'll hyperfixate. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So there's bookends there, right?
Yeah.
And it's the in between that you really have to be focusing on. And a lot of times people will just go to the margins and be like, oh, but look at these horrible problems, or they'll gloss over things and be like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
And that's just not obviously a healthy way of doing any business.
No, 100%.
So yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's really good. I'm glad that I asked that question because it's been something that's been weighing on our minds here over at Medor Photography, because it's important to us to understand, where the market is headed from an agent standpoint, so that we can better understand how we can continue to provide value to our clients.
100%. And I think the biggest thing here is reach out and ask questions to a trusted real estate professional. If you're confused about what you're reading, the reality is there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think we all know the news likes to, I don't want to use the word exaggerate, but spin things in a way that gets clicks.
Sensationalized.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. It's all about getting clicks.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily fake or made up.
Nope.
It's just simply brought to the extremes so that it can get more traction.
And in particular, when you're reading, go past the headline and read the actual meat, and you can read the actual settlement. It's available. I should say proposed settlement because it's still not finalized. But I think that we have clarity, which we haven't had for a long time. This has been a multi-year ongoing process.
Sure.
So you got to imagine the stress and anxiety that had been building over the last couple of years of the unknown.
Yeah, not knowing how this is all going to pan out.
Yeah, and now we finally have something that is not final, but at least it's a direction.
Yep.
And
even if it may not be the perfect solution in some people's eyes,
correct.
A concrete solution is better than the question mark that existed.
Oh, much better. Because then we have something we can work on. In the nebulous nature it was before, there was nothing you could do.
Nebulous nature, I like that one. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Did I use it right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, cool. We didn't know what to do. Yeah. There was nothing we could do. Now at least we have something we can work on and work towards. And I really want, and one of the things I think your team can help do with myself and other agents is let's get back to value. Let's get back to value conversations. Because to your point, that really is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yes.
You can hire a contractor for very cheap money to renovate your kitchen, and you'll get a kitchen.
Yep.
But
what about the experience?
And what about the finished product, right? Were they missing for 2 weeks?
Correct.
Did you get the wrong color?
What kind of anxieties popped up that didn't need to be there? Yeah. And you might not be able to assign a dollar value to those anxieties or those stresses. But at the end of the day, it's like I had breakfast this morning so I'm staying at the DoubleTree, and I had the continental breakfast there. And I walked out of there only having eaten half of what I put on my plate.
Sure.
And the reason why is because they just failed to deliver value in some of the ingredients.
Correct.
It was too much sodium in the eggs. Yeah. The sausage was second rate. And the home fries were just like big chunks of potatoes. Yep. And so had they gone the extra mile and even charged me $2, $3 more for that continental breakfast, I would have been significantly more impressed or more satisfied with my experience.
100%.
And it wasn't about the dollars. It was about, did I have a good breakfast that I was content with and that I walked out saying, I don't need to eat until 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And so it's if you can take that on a micro level of just breakfast on a plate, think about what you can do on a larger scale of corporate America or even self-employed America, and how that translates to different areas of our business.
100%. It's just like me on a Saturday choosing to go out to a local restaurant and getting breakfast.
Yep.
I can make an omelet.
Yeah.
I am capable.
Sure.
Some might think not, but I am. Like, I can do it, but I like the experience.
Yep.
I'm willing to pay for that value of the fact that when I leave there, I'm like, it was relaxing.
It's true. It's true. And I can't tell you how many times, Jen and I have gone out to, I'd say pricey restaurants and walked out of there and been like, you know what? That less pricey restaurant was better, not because of the prices, but because they actually understood what they were delivering.
Yeah.
Versus the more expensive places that are just charging a premium because of a name or because of a product, but then they fail to deliver on the service element, right? And totally that element exists regardless of what you're doing in industry, and it's important that realtors also understand how that plays into their job roles.
100%.
So awesome.
It's a new frontier, and I'm excited about it.
Awesome. How are we for time? All right, so we have a little. Yep. No, that's good. That's good. All right, so we're cruising right along. So let's talk a little bit about your goals for this year as Pelletier Properties, if you're able and willing,
100%
to provide that. So so give us a little bit of a sneak peek of.
Yeah, I run a very open team. My goal is if we're not helping the industry get better, then we're failing.
Love it.
So for me, I'm a big advocate for helping train other agents and working with new agents in the industry, working with agents from other areas. I just got back from a conference, Keller Williams Regional Conference.
Yep.
Again, it's all about masterminding, right? It's about talking and solidifying how we're gonna move things forward. So. We have an aggressive goal to sell, or I should say, my big philosophy is to help. So my tagline for our team is "Let me know how we can help." So our goal is to help 100 families this year. We actually previously did reach the 100 family goal. As many people know, there's less real estate on the market and less transactions overall. Transactions were down about 30% last year.
Although we're seeing a significant uptick this year.
We're upticking, yeah.
Yep.
So last year we were down 30%. Pelletier Properties was only down about 25%.
Yep.
So we were in that 70 families range.
Sure.
So we want to get back up to that 100 families range.
Okay.
And that's all about basically grabbing market share in different areas.
Yep.
My goal is to really lean in to what we were talking about, value.
Yep.
As we move forward.
And articulating it.
100%. And making sure the team can articulate it effectively.
Yes.
And one agent's value might be different than the other.
Yep.
And that's okay.
But that's the specialization. The specificity is to who their audience is, who their demographic is. And that's an important thing to call out and understand.
So what we're actually doing, and we actually made this decision 2 days ago. So
fresh off the press,
we are dropping our lead service. So we're paying for leads. So many people know, and many people may not know, when you go to Zillow and Realtor.com and a lot of these search engines. Many times when you inquire about a particular property, your information is kind of being sold off to a potential buyer's agent to help you with purchase the property. And we were using one of those lead services for about 6 months.
Okay.
We're trying to expand the business when things were down, and we made a decision with everything that's going on and everything we just talked about to pivot again. And we're going to take those funds and push it on value and focus on making sure that our team's value is clear to our clients and our potential clients. A key differentiation for me is we don't use the term past clients.
Yep.
Everyone's a client.
Sure.
They were a client. They are still a client. Hopefully they're a client in the future.
Just because you've done a transaction doesn't mean that you're not going to do one again. And
absolutely.
It's just a matter of when. It's not if.
And it can be an investment property. It can be helping with the sale of a family member's property. And so we're going to lean into value, and we're going to focus on articulating that value through multiple different sources to grab some of that market share.
Sure.
And so our zone is Southern New Hampshire, Massachusetts, really focused on central Massachusetts, but Massachusetts. And then we are now licensed in Connecticut and Rhode Island.
Excellent.
We've
So
done
a corridor thing going on.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for being able to serve our clients and meet their needs. So we actually ended up starting to have a lot of clients jumping the border from Mass and Connecticut. So
no, tell me that's not true.
So we had to expand.
Yeah.
We grabbed Connecticut. We've actually done quite a few transactions in Connecticut, and we just entered the Rhode Island market very recently. So. So we're excited to continue to kind of bat and not necessarily getting caught up in how many leads can we get? Where can we get those from? Let's focus on getting the right leads and the motivated.
Yes.
Find the motivated.
Yeah.
So we typically shoot for about 50-50. So that would mean, 50 sellers, 50 buyers. And we do commercial real estate as well. We do about 20% commercial on the buy and leasing side.
Right.
So we got, we're off to a good start. It's early, right? It's early in the year. We're actually
Spring started early.
Spring is starting early. Yeah.
We have.
It didn't snow.
I think that's a large part of it. But interestingly, our April, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain, our April right now is shaping up to be about 20% busier than 2022's.
Yep.
Which is not an insignificant.
And I already booked an appointment with you for April 30th.
There you go.
Right? So never was I ever booking appointments out that far, but it's like, let's go. And I think a lot of sellers are ready now. We all know many people kind of hunkered down because rates were high. And the reality is rates are historically on a very normal trend.
Right.
I realize that they're very high compared to what they were, but they're historically on a decent trend line. And so a lot of sellers, I think, are starting to see that, okay, this massive home that we've been heating and maintaining, maybe it's finally time to let it go. Yes, we're going to have to get a higher rate when we buy. And what's the value?
Right.
What's the quality of life?
Right.
Don't have to mow that big lawn anymore.
Yep. That's what we did with Lunenburg. You know, when we sold our home, it just didn't really make any sense anymore to be doing what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And looking back at the value of that, it was something that ended up being a point of contention and a stressor for reasons that I can't even look back and agree to, And so a lot of people, I think, are also having that awareness where, yeah, sure, the rates are not what I'd like it to be. I'm getting out of a 3.5% or a 3% mortgage and into what, 6.5%, or
we're right around that.
Yeah.
Which we're down.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Because we were seeing 8s for a little bit.
Yeah.
So having that awareness of like, you know what, I'm just going to have to do what is most valuable for my family to do. And that might not be a financial conversation. It might be a lifestyle conversation.
I think what's really important is I talk to a lot of buyers. People are constantly asking me, what's coming next? What's going to happen? If I had a crystal ball, I would tell you. And I do feel rates are going to go down. I'm pretty confident. I don't think they're going to skyrocket down. I think they're going to go down. And I think what's important is until you get into the market, you don't get to experience the benefits of the market.
No.
So when you get in the market, you start to experience the benefits of building equity.
Yep.
When you get into the market, you start to experience the benefits of owning your own space. You start to experience the benefits of being able to improve your space and build equity. A lot of people wait for this future opportunity, which the reality is, if people had bought 2 years ago, they would have massive equity. Sure, when they made that offer 2 years ago and it didn't get accepted and they didn't want to go a little bit higher, that was a financial decision for them.
Sure.
I think it's important to realize right now there is an opportunity to buy. We feel very confident that in the future you'll have an opportunity to refinance. Make sure you look at all the financial products out there because there's some great adjustable rate mortgages. That's a dirty word I just said. And I'm sorry, but right now it shouldn't be. I think it's a dirty word because society for the whole time for the last 20 years has been experiencing some pretty good rates.
Yep.
So the concept,
you're talking 3-1 or 5-1s?
5-1s, 7-1s, 10-1s.
Okay.
Right? There's a lot of different options. I recently heard about a 5-1, which was 5% for the first 5 years.
That's really good.
Right? And I think that people have developed an anxiety around adjustable rates because some of the problems we've dealt with in the past dealt with adjustable rates. And this is about realizing that, okay, if I can have 5% for the next 5 years, watch the market, maybe refi out of it to a fixed rate, and you're still saving a ton of money over those 5 years.
Yep.
And if you're only going to live there for 7,
Yep.
like the average historically for homes, it used to be live in a house for 7 years. It's ticked up in this recent market to about 10 years.
Yep.
And if you're only going to live there for 7 to 10 years, it's not your forever home. Adjustable rate might be the best option out there.
Sure. That's a good point, especially if it's one of those kinds of homes where you're like, I don't know if my job situation is going to be a permanent one. I don't know if my family growth situation is going to be, like, if you only have one child or 2 children, and you're like, well, maybe we want 3, or maybe, we expect an in-law to have to come live with us or whatever. There's a lot of life changes that can happen within that 5-year window that cause people to even uproot where they are.
100%. And in that 5-year window, how much is your salary going to increase? Are you going to be in a better situation to pay that higher interest, even if it is higher? So I think adjustable rates are something that should always be considered in this market we're in right now. Look for opportunities to save money in the short term and keep an eye. It's all about financial management. Keep an eye on the rates. Figure out if in the future you can adjust or refi into a fixed rate.
Sure. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
For spending the past hour having a chat.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this again after the summer dust settles. And see how things went.
Absolutely. And I think this is the first time that I've really talked openly about the settlement, mainly because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And now I feel comfortable knowing what I know. So
that's great.
No, it's my pleasure to talk about it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Nick.
You're welcome.